There will be a moment in your life, maybe it's already happened, when you walk into a room and realize the room has already decided against you. Your reasons won't matter. Your evidence won't matter. The people you trusted will look at you like a stranger, and the people who never liked you will finally have permission to say it out loud. And in that moment, you will have exactly two options. You can break, or you can become something the room was never prepared for. This video is about the second option. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, the place where ancient philosophy meets the battles you're actually fighting right now. Not theory, not motivational noise. The real, tested psychology of men like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, men who faced betrayal, exile, and condemnation, and came out the other side unbroken. If you're new here, consider subscribing, because this channel exists for exactly the moment you're in right now. Here's something nobody tells you about being attacked, excluded, or outnumbered. It isn't the opposition itself that destroys people. It's the panic that opposition creates inside the mind. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years before modern psychology gave it a name. They knew that 100 enemies outside you are nothing compared to one untrained mind inside you. And they built an entire philosophy, not around winning every argument, not around making everyone like you, but around becoming a person who simply cannot be shaken, regardless of how many people stand against him. Today, we're going to walk through exactly how they did it. We'll look at an emperor who had to keep ruling an empire, while his own general declared war on him. We'll look at a slave who turned chains into philosophy, and we'll look at a man exiled by the most powerful woman in Rome who used that exile to become untouchable. By the end of this video, you won't just understand Stoic calm intellectually. You'll have the actual mental tools to walk into a hostile room, at work, in your family, on your worst day, and stay standing while everyone around you expects you to fall. Stay with me. This one matters. Let's start with a man who had more reason than almost anyone in history to feel like the world had turned on him. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man alive, emperor of Rome, commander of the legions. And yet, in the year 175 AD, while he was away fighting wars on the northern frontier, exhausted and possibly believing he was dying, news reached him that one of his most trusted generals, Avidius Cassius, had declared himself emperor. Think about the psychological weight of that for a moment. This wasn't a stranger. This was a man Marcus had promoted, trusted, relied on. And now there were rumors the man had moved because he believed Marcus was already dead, or worse, that plenty of people in Rome wanted him dead and were simply waiting to see who would win. Marcus Aurelius, in that moment, was a man surrounded, an empire questioning his survival, a general turning provinces against him, senators recalculating their loyalties in real time, the way people always do when they sense weakness. Most rulers in history responded to this kind of threat with paranoia, purges, and bloodshed. Marcus did something almost unthinkable. He kept writing in his journal, the same journal we now call Meditations, and in it he reminded himself again and again of a single idea that we're going to return to throughout this entire video. People will act according to their own nature. Expecting them not to is like being angry at a fig tree for growing figs. He wasn't saying betrayal doesn't hurt. He was saying something more useful. That betrayal is predictable. It is built into the nature of large groups of imperfect people operating under fear and ambition. The wise man doesn't act shocked when humans behave like humans. And here's the detail that should genuinely move you. When the rebellion collapsed and Cassius was killed by his own soldiers, Marcus reportedly grieved. He didn't celebrate. He had wanted the chance to forgive the man, not destroy him. He even reportedly protected the families connected to the rebellion from retaliation. That is what Stoic calm actually produces. Not coldness, not revenge fantasies. The capacity to remain humane even when betrayed by people who should have been loyal. If you've ever felt that exact sensation, the room turning, the group chat going quiet, the people who were supposed to have your back suddenly recalculating, you are standing exactly where Marcus Aurelius once stood. The only question is, which version of yourself shows up next? Now let's go to someone with even less power than an emperor, a man with, on paper, none at all. Epictetus was born into slavery in Hierapolis, in what is now Turkey. He didn't choose his name. Epictetus literally means acquired, or added on, a word used for property. He was, for a portion of his life, owned by a man named Epaphroditus, a former slave himself, who had become a secretary to the Emperor Nero and, by most historical accounts, a man capable of real cruelty. There's a famous, possibly embellished, but philosophically important story that Epaphroditus once twisted Epictetus's leg as punishment, and Epictetus calmly told him, "You will break it." And when it did break, he simply said, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" With no anger, no plea, no collapse. Whether or not that exact exchange happened precisely as recorded, it captures something true about the man, because Epictetus went on to build the single most useful piece of Stoic technology that exists for moments when the world is against you. It's called the dichotomy of control, and once you understand it, you will never see conflict the same way again. Here it is, stripped down to its essence. Some things are within your power, and some things are not. Within your power, your judgments, your responses, your choices, your effort, your character. Outside your power, other people's opinions, other people's choices, the outcome of events, your reputation, in rooms you're not standing in. Epictetus's insight was brutal and freeing at the same time. He said that misery comes from confusing these two categories, from treating things outside your control as though they were inside it. When you do that, you hand your peace of mind to forces you can never actually command. A leg that can be broken by someone stronger than you, a jury of co-workers who already decided their verdict, a family member who has chosen, for reasons that may have nothing to do with you, to be against you. Once you stop trying to control the room, you stop being controlled by the room. This doesn't mean you don't care what happens. It means you stop confusing caring with needing to control the outcome. You can care deeply about being misunderstood and still refuse to let that misunderstanding own your nervous system. Here's a practical way to use this today. The next time you feel the panic rising because people are against you, ask yourself one question: am I currently trying to control something that was never mine to control? 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. And the moment you see it clearly, the grip loosens. Tell me in the comments, when in your life has Epictetus's dichotomy of control would have saved you weeks of suffering, if only you'd known it sooner. There's a third figure we need here, because he gives us the most vivid image of all 3 Stoics: Seneca. Seneca's life was, frankly, a minefield of people turning against him. He was exiled to Corsica for 8 years on accusations of an affair with the emperor's niece. Accusations historians still debate. He was later recalled, became advisor and tutor to a young Nero, helped guide the empire through some of its better years, and then watched, slowly and with growing dread, as that same student turned into one of history's most dangerous tyrants, eventually accused of conspiracy against the very emperor he had raised. Seneca was ordered to take his own life. He did so with what observers described as remarkable composure, comforting the people around him rather than the other way around. This is a man who knew intimately what it felt like to have the most powerful person in his world turn against him, not once, but multiple times across decades. In his writing, Seneca leaves us one of the most enduring images in all of Stoic philosophy. He compares the wise man to a rock standing in the surf. Waves crash against it. Spray flies into the air. The sound is enormous, dramatic, violent, and the rock does not move. Read that again, because most people misunderstand it. The rock isn't unaware of the waves. The rock isn't pretending the ocean is calm. The rock simply has a kind of internal density, a settledness, that the water cannot match. The waves exhaust themselves against the rock. The rock does not exhaust itself, resisting the waves. That is the entire Stoic theory of staying calm when everyone is against you in a single image. You are not trying to stop the waves. People are going to talk. People are going to judge. People are, in some seasons of your life, going to organize against you, sometimes for reasons that are fair, and sometimes for reasons that are not. Your job is not to control the ocean. Your job is to become the kind of person the ocean cannot move. Seneca wrote, "Something else worth sitting with, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, the anticipation of conflict, the rehearsal of confrontation. In your mind, at 2 a.m., the imagined worst-case versions of what people are saying about you, that mental theater, does far more damage than the actual events ever do. This is why so many people collapse under social pressure before anything has even happened. They are drowning in a flood that exists only in their own head." Let's pause the history for a moment, because I want to explain why this feels so unbearable. In the first place, because understanding the mechanism is half the cure. For most of human history, being rejected by your group wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. If the tribe turned against you, you lost protection, food, shelter, mating opportunities, everything. Your nervous system evolved, quite literally, to treat social exclusion as a survival threat, en par with physical danger. This is why being disagreed with online can trigger the same biological alarm bells as being chased by a predator. Your prefrontal cortex knows, logically, that a stranger's opinion on the internet cannot kill you. But your amygdala, the ancient alarm system in your brain, doesn't know the difference between everyone in this meeting disagrees with me and the tribe has exiled me into the wilderness to starve. That's why your hands shake before a hard conversation. That's why your chest tightens when you see your name mentioned in a group chat you weren't part of. That's why a single critical comment can ruin an entire day that was otherwise full of good things. It's not weakness. It's 80,000 years of evolution misfiring in a world that no longer matches the threat it's preparing you for. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they had something almost as good: brutal self-honesty about how the mind distorts reality under threat. And their solution wasn't to suppress the alarm. It was to retrain what the alarm was allowed to fire for. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. How much of your suffering this year came from actual events versus your anticipation or interpretation of events? If you're honest, for most of us, it's not close. The interpretation does almost all of the damage. So now, let's get practical, because understanding the theory is one thing, using it the next time you're sitting in a hostile room is another. Here are 5 tools drawn directly from these 3 men's lives and writings that you can use starting today. Tool 1. The view from above. Marcus Aurelius used to mentally lift himself above the situation, imagining himself looking down at the argument, the betrayal, the room, from a great height. Suddenly, the people who felt enormous and threatening become small. The conflict that felt like the center of the universe becomes one tiny disagreement in one tiny room on one small planet among billions of people who will never know or care that it happened. This isn't about minimizing your pain. It's about restoring proportion, because panic always exaggerates scale. Tool 2. Premeditation of evils. The Stoics regularly imagined the worst-case outcome of a conflict before it happened, not to manifest doom, but to strip it of its power, to shock. If you walk into a difficult meeting, having already imagined the worst version of what could be said to you, and you've already decided how you'll respond with dignity, even then, the actual meeting, no matter how hostile, will feel smaller than what you rehearsed. Surprise is what breaks people. Preparation is what holds them together. Tool 3. The inner citadel. This is the term modern Stoic scholars use to describe the part of Marcus Aurelius's mind that no external force could ever occupy. His judgment, his character, his choice of how to respond. Picture it as a fortress at the center of you. Enemies can surround the walls. They can shout at the gates. They cannot get inside unless you hand them the key, and the key is your consent to be disturbed. Nobody can make you furious, ashamed, or panicked without your mind's cooperation. That cooperation is the one thing you control completely in every room for the rest of your life. Tool 4. Separate the sting from the story. When someone criticizes or attacks you, there are actually 2 separate events happening. The raw sensation, which is small and passes in seconds, and the story you build on top of it. This means I'm a failure. This means they all secretly hate me. This means my reputation is destroyed forever. The Stoics insisted that almost all suffering lives in the story, not the sting. Practice noticing the moment you start narrating disaster and gently ask, is this the actual event or the story I've built on top of it? Tool 5. Amor fati. Loving what happens. This is the most advanced tool and the most powerful. Instead of merely tolerating opposition, the Stoics trained themselves to treat it as material, fuel for becoming stronger. Every person who underestimates you, every unfair accusation, every cold shoulder, becomes an opportunity to practice the very calm you're trying to build. You don't need the world to stop testing you. You need to start seeing the test as the gym, not the punishment. Which one of these 5 tools do you think you need most right now? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know, because it tells me exactly what to cover deeper in future videos. Here's something the Stoics understood that most people today still don't. The reason opposition feels unbearable isn't really about the opposition. It's about how much of your identity you've outsourced to other people's opinions. If your sense of worth is built entirely on consensus, on everyone agreeing you're good, smart, right, likable, Then the moment consensus breaks, your entire identity is in freefall. You're not just facing disagreement, you're facing the collapse of the foundation you built your self-image on. But if your worth is built on something internal, your own judgment of your character, your effort, your integrity, measured against your own standard, rather than the room's mood, then opposition becomes uncomfortable, but it stops being existential. People can disagree with you all day long. They cannot evict you from a house you never let them build for you in the first place. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your current anxiety about being disliked is really about losing something real, and how much is about losing an identity you built on other people's approval? That question alone, sat with honestly, diffuses more conflict than any clever comeback ever could. Let me bring this down to something smaller than emperors and philosophers, because most of us don't face armies. We face dinner tables, group chats, office politics, and people we love choosing, for a season, to be against us. Imagine a man, call him no one in particular, because he could be any of us, who makes a decision everyone around him disagrees with. Maybe he leaves a stable job to try something uncertain. Maybe he ends a relationship his family thought he should fight for. Maybe he simply tells the truth in a room that wanted comfortable silence instead. And suddenly, the people closest to him go quiet in that particular way that says more than shouting ever could. Friends stop calling as often. Family members trade knowing looks. Even people who say nothing directly somehow make their disapproval the loudest thing in the room. He has two paths in front of him. Path one, he spends the next year of his life trying to win back approval, explaining, defending, shrinking himself back down to a size the room finds comfortable, abandoning the decision, not because he stopped believing in it, but because the silence became unbearable. Path two, he does something almost nobody around him expects. He stops needing the room to agree. He keeps showing up, not louder, not angrier, not performing confidence. He doesn't feel, but steady, consistent, unmoved, in the way Seneca's rock is unmoved. He lets the waves crash, and he lets time do what time always does, reveal whether the decision was sound. A year later, in almost every version of this story, across history and across ordinary lives today, something quiet happens. The people who doubted him don't always apologize, but they stop talking. And eventually, some of them come back, not because he convinced them with arguments, but because his calm outlasted their certainty. That is the actual reward of Stoic resilience, not winning the argument in the room, outlasting the room. You don't need everyone to come around. You need to still be standing, undistorted, when the noise finally settles, because it always settles. It always has. So let's return to where we started. The moment you walk into a room that has already decided against you. Marcus Aurelius taught us that betrayal is predictable, not personal, in the way panic makes it feel, and that even in betrayal, you can choose to remain humane. Epictetus taught us the dichotomy of control, that the moment you stop fighting for things that were never yours to control, you take back the only thing that was always yours. Seneca taught us to become the rock, not the wave, to let the noise exhaust itself against your stillness, instead of exhausting yourself trying to silence the noise. None of this makes opposition painless. The Stoics were not pretending to be unfeeling statues. They grieved, they felt fear, they understood loss. What they refused to do was let that pain make their decisions for them. The next time you feel the room turning, remember, you don't need the room. You need the fortress inside you that the room can never enter unless you open the gate yourself. If this video gave you even one tool you'll actually use the next time you feel surrounded, that's exactly why this channel exists. Hit that like button so more people who need this find it. Subscribe if you want this kind of grounded, no-nonsense, stoic guidance in your corner every week. And tell me below, what's the hardest room you've ever had to stay calm in? Until next time, stay steady, even when nothing else is.